Yes, and I think it's time to start. Ariel, do you want to start?
Yes. Eu vou falar em português e vou traduzindo para o... Eu vou falar em português e eu vou traduzir para o Bart em inglês, mas é bem rápido. A gente está muito feliz de fazer esse primeiro webinário na Open Knowledge Brasil. Um dos principais motivos, e a gente estava conversando com o Bart antes de começar, we were talking with Bart before we start, é que é muito importante a gente entender e aprender como a gente pode gerar mais impacto com os dados abertos. Então, a gente já vem passando por um processo de abertura de dados, de construção de infraestrutura, que é muito incipiente e ainda falta muito, mas além disso, um dos desafios dos webinars e das pessoas que a gente tem convidado é entender qual pode ser o impacto com o uso desses dados que aos poucos vão sendo abertos. So, one of the main objectives with the webinar is to understand and to learn how can we make more impact with the open data we already have and the data we will have in the future. So it's an honor to receive you and to come with your presentation. Aí eu passo a palavra para Yasu, que vai apresentar o Bart, e aí ele já começa. E mais uma coisa importante, o primeiro webinário que a gente faz, certamente vai ter algum outro probleminha de técnico, mas a gente vai ajustando, principalmente para os próximos. A ideia é que o Bart faça uma apresentação de mais ou menos uns 15 minutos, e depois a gente vai utilizar o chat do YouTube, justamente para receber as perguntas para ele. E aí ele vai responder, para vocês. O vídeo vai ficar disponível no YouTube, no YouTube da Open Knowledge. Aí eu passo a palavra para a Yasu, então.
Obrigado, Ariel. Thank you, Bart, for being here. E obrigado a todo mundo que está assistindo o webinar. Eu acho que o Bart vai se apresentar ele mesmo. E a gente, só lembrando que depois a gente vai disponibilizar os webinars em português, com legenda em português, mas é muito importante que vocês façam perguntas e se vocês quiserem interromper o Bart em algum momento, é só falar. Bart, I think you can introduce yourself and start your presentation. Thank you for being here again, and the stage is yours.
Okay, excellent. You can hear me clearly?
Yes, perfectly. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you for the invitation and obviously for the kind words. I think that we're just speaking in Portuguese, from which I understand very little. I'd like to talk to you about smart data for smarter firefighters and more specifically linked data for a world we don't understand. In this presentation, I will introduce myself and why I do what I do and explain some of the things we are doing with open data and how that matters. Let me see if I can switch. Yes, as my Twitter handle says, Semantic Fire, I've been into semantic web technology for a long time, and I have been into fire for a bit, so that came together in my Twitter handle. So that is where you can follow me. I'll have some rambling in Dutch, but I try to support my international followers as much as possible as well, in a combination with tweets about fire department and open data, linked data, and technology. I run a company, Netage, which is a SME where we specifically work on linked data and open data projects for various fire departments, literally around the world. The company is almost 21 years old. We have always been into the data integration business. We were on the front runners of thinking about what could be done with open data. And about 14 years ago, we started focusing on fire service and have been focusing solely on the fire service for the last 7 years with all the projects and products we do. Besides being the owner of a software company, I'm also a career firefighter. So in the lower right corner, the tall guy, that is me, with some of my colleagues at the Amsterdam Fire Department. And these things come together. So being a career firefighter at the Amsterdam Fire Department and the CEO of a information management company, when I bring these things together, I'll get confronted with my fear. I'm afraid that something will happen to me or either one of my colleagues, and in the end, we will figure out that all the information we needed to know was available in our own systems or in that of our partner organizations. And when I started to express this fear about 8 years ago now, I was expecting to sort of get a lot of resistance from the higher command in the Amsterdam Fire Department. But to my utter surprise, they basically said, well, you should not be afraid. You can be sure that it is like that. You can be sure that you guys go to places you should not go to, but we do not have the means to tell you that. And I've been on this journey for quite a bit. This is the first product we released. This is the Amsterdam Fire Station. And if you look at the date at the top of the screen, today it's literally 6 years now, 7 years and a day ago that we installed the first version of our application in a fire station in Amsterdam. I looked a lot younger, by the way, as well. We have been going on ever since to improve our products and to use better and more open data to enhance this product. So at some point, I'm proud of the fact that I'm doing this for 7 years. At the other point, I still think there is a long way to go to leverage all the possibilities of open data within the fire service. So how did I come to this point that I started to realize that we need to do better and smarter things with data in the fire service? As I showed you this picture, this is for us a standard fire. This is on a Sunday morning somewhere in Amsterdam. And we were able to save a father and his 3-year-old daughter from the back of the house. For us, as dramatic as it might look to non-professionals, this is a standard fire. This is business as usual. And obviously for you, if it happens to you as a normal civilian, it's the worst thing that can happen because you lose everything. As you can see, the fire engulfed the complete house. If we go a bit further, if we think about what we need to do when we go to fires in those 4 minutes that we go to such fires, what is it that goes through our head? What is it that we are thinking about? It's a lot of information that we have to process and think about. And the environment in which we do that is not really calm. We have to get in the fire truck, get dressed, get our breathing apparatus on, assemble all the gear we need. And most of the times you're happy that you have your clothes on by the finishing of the 4 minutes, let alone that you're really able to go through a lot of information. And this is the workplace where we need to process all that information. So you can see there's a lot of digital devices. There's a tablet computer. On the left, you see a whole stack of books. And you see mobile phones and various touch displays all over the unit. And I highlighted them a bit. So you can see here that none of the user interfaces and the purposes of all these devices are actually uniform. So it is up to the commander at the fire truck to link all the information and all the bits and pieces around incidents we go to together and assemble a information position for himself, which is very hard in the stressful environment we need to work in. So even though we get some information, I started to realize that this information is most of the times giving us answers to questions we don't ask. And that might sound a bit strange, but I'll give you some explanations along the way of information we do get. So we have navigation systems on the fire truck, which sounds like a great idea, but if you look at the navigation system, the only thing it will tell you is that you have to go left after 30 meters. Where the fire service actually would like to know where they need to go in the end. This problem, this system in this form is causing a problem because if I cannot turn left after 30 meters, it doesn't supply me with any other option. If it would train the firefighters to make them smarter about the area they need to go and would tell them, well, this is your end destination, it might be a lot smarter for them and easier to navigate with just point by point or turn by turn navigation. Because if I can't turn right, the system will not help me, and traffic was busy, sorry we're late, is not really a valid excuse for the fire department. So we have this famous museum in the city of Amsterdam that used to be in the area of it is in the area of the fire station that used to be stationed on. It's a huge building, and visit it by all means if you ever visit Amsterdam. But it's a maze. It's a very complex museum. So we have, and this is all in Dutch, so don't bother too much about understanding it. We have deployment plans for buildings like this. And at the bottom, you can see it's page 1 out of 5. And we have 5 pages of information about the Anne Frank house, which is useful for the fire department. In reality, the first arriving fire station is only a minute away from the Anne Frank house. So we do not have time to read all those 5 pages. And if you look at the upper right corner, which says biggest danger, grootste gevaar, it will actually turn to another book. There is a link to other data. And this link is actually for a procedure on complex buildings, complexe gebouwen. So not alone you have to read 5 pages, you have to go to another book with other pages as well. In reality, none of this is actually used automatically because it's too much hassle to look it up. You're busy enough as you're going. And if you start thinking about making connections of information and using information in a smarter way, you find information like this. So somehow, somewhere digitally available is the amount of free spots in a park house. But still, the fire department has no clue or has no means to obtain the amount of cars that are parked in a park house. So even though the purpose of the number of free spots for the general public is very interesting, for us, we actually care more about the amount of cars because that says something about your fire load. Is it empty or is it stacked? It changes your perspective on how you're going to operate in environments like this. So the data is digitally available. Why do we still have to make the links? And if we see on services and devices out there which could actually tremendously help the fire department, we still have a long way to go. The Nest smoke detectors, I'm actually not sure if they're available in Brazil, but sooner or later there will be internet-connected smoke detectors. And these detectors can spit out a huge amount of information where you can do all sorts of interesting things with. Anecdotally, I think my Nest smoke alarm is going off. Google AdWords just pitched me a fire extinguisher and offer for temporary housing. So what they basically say here, if this thing is connected to the internet and it detects a fire, it can actually modify the way Google AdWords reacts to the position or the situation in your home. This is all great, but you better have the fire department having access to that information as well. And that is obviously a difficult thing to talk about to large companies like this. But it would be really great if sensor technology would be open for the fire department to use. Because this smoke detector could actually tell us when was the first detection, what is the temperature, how is the situation now that we are in front of the house, or it's not reacting at all anymore, which probably means it's broken down because of the excessive heat. It's all very viable information to use for the fire department. So that is sort of the position we're currently at. And then there is something which I call the reality of the types of incidents we go to. And if you look at what's going on incidents around us, and if I start thinking about that, you see some very strange incidents. This is a famous incident in the south of the Netherlands in 2011, the biggest chemical fire to date. Went completely out of hand. And the thing that was actually interesting was the video that was shot after this incident, where the first commanding officer basically said, when I arrived on scene, I understood that all the information we gathered, all the scenarios and all the training we did with the company, because it was a known company for its hazards with all the chemicals, we could not use any of that information because what was going on there was nothing we ever thought of. The biggest culprit in this picture is the yellow container with the small red dot. It's completely filled with acetone and will make firefighters who are watching this picture nervous. You do not want a container filled with acetone so close to the fire. So how are you going to solve that? Chemical fires need to be extinguished with foam. Acetone, heated acetone, needs to be cooled with water, and those two conflict. In the end, they made the decision to cool the container to prevent it from exploding and let the chemical fire completely go out of hand. They tackled the incident after 2 days, And the investigation afterwards basically told them it was the smartest thing to do. Left aside the whole environmental problem that caused this fire, obviously, or that was caused by this fire. One of the cute things on the tagline in the picture of Chemiepak is that we know how to deal with your chemicals. It's not really what they show off in this picture. So if we conclude that based on the static information we get, the procedures and the plans are actually not really useful, should we think about creating more extreme and more dynamic plans? Should we do something like this? Well, if you would propose a plan for an incident like this to an average fire department, they'll probably send you away and say that you're nuts, right? Well, what you see in the middle of this picture is a Skoda Octavia, a European model family car in a church roof, about 10 meters high, and it leaves all sorts of interesting questions. How are you going to tackle an incident like this? We never go out with a ladder truck to traffic incidents, but this time you need it. And if you look closely at the picture, you can actually see the lines they've put up there to stabilize the firefighters. You can see the stretcher being hoisted in. And how do you treat an incident like this? Is this a car accident? Is this an elevated rescue? Is this a building collapse? There's tons of questions on pictures like this. But the best thing to learn from a picture is that the fire department will solve this. No matter what, the fire department will always find a solution to get those people out, which basically means we have to be very flexible with all the tools we use. And you're not going to have plans for this. You just have to use your skills to get this forward. And if you look at incidents which are bizarre and hard to classify, it's the same thing. For Dutch standards, this would be both a train accident because it is blocking the rail track, but obviously also a plane crash. Most of the current emergency response systems do not actually allow you to have like multiple phases on the same incident because the data models are very strict. And instead of having a flexible model of data around incidents, they try to classify all they can think about up front, where what you actually want is to have the information reflect the reality and not deny reality because it doesn't fit in the information. So if you think about incidents like this, what you actually want if in the 4 minutes you go to an incident, the mindset you need to organize is that all the information is going to be connected. Less information and only relevant information, and relevant specifically to what is going on at that point in time. So not that what you think up front might be useful. No, what is going on at that time and assemble all the information together. You need flexible model for that, and you need a lot of data sources to make that happen. So what are some of the projects we are working on in the open data scene and the data scene for fire services in general? If you take an incident like this needs a lot of coordination on scene. And most of the times, coordination on scene looks like this. A lot of people from various disciplines getting together and talking to each other. And they're taking paper notes, which is all fine. But more and more, you see the introduction of iPads and digital communication systems. And they even come to the point that maybe we should not really come together, but we should just exchange data of our operations. And that left us with a very interesting notion that we started to realize, especially in the Netherlands, but I've seen that worldwide, is that the fire department specifically doesn't have a explicit set of terminology. We use terminology very implicit, almost like a folksonomy, not even a taxonomy, a folksonomy. And if you then have a folksonomy which you're going to exchange digitally, you're going to end up with misunderstandings. And there's tons of brilliant examples for that. So what we started to do, one of the first projects we started to do was something we called the Firebrary, an authoritative set of fire department terms. So we started to create a project where we will allow fire departments to submit their terminology and try to align it as much as possible with other fire departments. But specifically, if they communicate digital information, they will link to the Firebrary, where at least their definition of the terminology they use is stored, so that others have the ability to understand what the other fire department or the other discipline is actually talking about. This might sound straightforward and very obvious, but in the 6 years that this project has been running, we've been faced with very interesting issues on how this is very hard for fire departments to do. But it's a very integral part of making open data and data in general work for fire departments. Make sure you understand the data. One of the other things we have been doing, and that's in conjunction with the W3C and OGC working group, is having geodata better available as linked data. Currently, most of the fire services in the Netherlands use GeoServer, have their own mapping services, but only spit out maps. And those maps contain the information if you understand what the map is about. But for an external organization, it's very hard to get any clue. So this is one of the proposals we did, which is actually going to be in the W3C working group, to allow WFS service to actually link to our definitions in the Fireberry, so that other people can actually understand what we have put on the map instead of just hoping with visual recognition that they get a clue. This is going to make it possible to really do interesting things. And it's all based on publicly available open data and linked open data. Some of the products we've created based on top of open data is Rescue Info Monitor, which we have been deploying in various fire departments around the world. This is a technical overview, but especially on the top right, where you see building and address administration, is that we are able to tap into publicly available data sets about buildings and addresses and geographical information, businesses, and tons of information. We pull that into our system and we help firefighters to create a completer picture of the incident they go to and the environment they work in. As shown in some of the earlier pictures, this is how it looks at the fire station. And this is a screen they get. This is from a US-based installation, where they can actually see some of the initial information they need to see before they go to an incident. The advantage of a system like this compared to mobile systems is that this gives the firefighters the first glance of the incident to go to while they are still at the fire station. It gives them a possibility to have a first quiet look in this relative moment of tranquility before they run out. And because if they start driving with the fire truck, there is going to be a lot of distraction around what they're doing to absorb the information. And based on where we are, where the geographic location and availability of data sets, we can do very interesting things. We can put business identifiers on there, what type of businesses are there, and then attach specific hazards and some of the standard operating procedure cards I've showed you in previous slides. We can actually automatically link that so that they have that in one display. They are going out well prepared. One of the other projects we're doing completely based on open data for now is something we call Rescue Info Insight, where we use open data to create risk maps of neighborhoods based on various socio-demographic pieces of information. You can determine that certain neighborhoods have a higher risk of fire than others. And this is a pretty cool project started by a master's student at the VU who's now working for us as our data scientist in the company. By collecting as much open data as possible, we are really able to draw a very concrete picture of where the risks are in your city. It's not predicting fire. I do not like the term of prediction with open data, but it gives you a good insight in where your risks are and how you should better and where you should better inform the public about the types of fires that might have. So it might turn up, this is the city of Amsterdam, where we draw a risk map with some indexes, and this will specifically tell you, okay, in certain neighborhoods, because of the types of buildings, because of the age of the buildings or the renovation status or socio-demographic backgrounds or accessibility, you need to either think about having better fire service there or better educating the people so that they are first aware they live in a dangerous neighborhood and that they might actually change their course of actions to prevent fires from happening. So that is very briefly on what we are doing with open data. I could go on for hours and hours, so I think it would be a nice time for some questions. But I think the first question is obviously, how did this guy end up there? So I'm going to answer that for you. The The picture is taken in the eastern part of Germany, or in East Germany. And in Germany in general, they do not have speed limits. So in Germany, you can go as fast as your car can take you. This guy was doing probably 180 kilometers an hour and took an off-ramp off the highway, missed a turn at the bottom, and launched himself 30 meters through the air, and was stuck up there for 2 hours. They eventually did get him out alive, but I'm not sure if he's still alive, if he has a driving style like that. So I think it's time to answer some questions, and I'll see if I can get myself into the picture again.
Thank you very much, Bart, and thank you very much. It was very interesting. There is like 11 or 12 people here in the transmission, in the webinar. I'll speak something in Portuguese. Pessoal, as dúvidas, por favor, enviar pelo chat que tem do lado direito do YouTube, da tela do YouTube. Tem um chat, algumas pessoas já se apresentaram. Eu peço para encaminhar as perguntas através do chat. A primeira pergunta é da Yaso, eu abro para ela e eu também tenho uma outra pergunta. Yaso, você quer fazer a sua pergunta?
Sim, a gente faz em português, Ariel? É bom.
Acho que pode fazer nas duas línguas, talvez, rapidamente.
Tá bom. Bart, I'm going to ask you in English and then I'll translate it to Portuguese.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing.
Okay. So about the accident with the car and in the church, I found that that experiment, like it's not an experiment, it is an accident, but your views on that are interesting because we are living this era where everyone is talking about big data for preventing accidents, and definitely accidents are something that is difficult to prevent because using big data, because if they are unexpected and not previously seen before, it's not something that big data would actually foresee. Like some car in a church roof, that's not something that using past series you could foresee. So could you tell us a little bit about the difference between having lots of big data, trying to foresee or see in advance situations like this, and the difference between having related data to organize the actions that you see when you are fighting this kind of accident, like very different accidents?
Okay. Yeah, excellent question. One of the slides which I did not put in there for the sake of time is that, which is a very interesting read, is the black swan theory, the impact of the highly improbable, which is more or less about this. This is from Nassim Taleb, and we could think about maybe actually putting a link to that book somewhere in the publication of this webinar. He basically says that if unexpected things happen, then they create disbelief in general, and then later on we will go over and sort of go over the data, and then we say, okay, well, we should have seen that coming. It's very logical that that happened. But he says that the statistics are very bad, or it's actually completely impossible to use statistics to detect future incidents. We tend to use big data to predict everything, but I really believe that that's not going to happen. What we can use big data for is to detect some of the standard types of fires, and that is what we use this Insight product for. So what are things that are really happening on a regular basis, and how can you see where it's most likely that something like that will happen? But that does not allow us to really predict what is going to happen. because the fire department is the one organization who is responsible for dealing with the outliers. Big data and machine learning and everything is very suitable to detect the common types of incidents. But the fire department is not doing common types of incidents, because every time an incident happens, we're creating new regulations for that. The reason that most large cities are completely built in concrete nowadays is because it was very common for them to burn down. So we've changed that already. So we're not going to find that in big data. I do think that it's useful to get some insight of what really is going on, and if we can find relations to incidents and better prepare our prevention measures to help the public stay safer. So that's one part. The other part is, how can we use these large amounts of data which are available to actually make firefighters use it better. And I think that if you see, so about 20 years ago when I started as a firefighter, we knew nothing about the places we went to. We had no idea on what type of buildings we were running into. But now with open data and other data sets which are able to be opened up, for us it's very easy to determine if there is a bakery in there and how old it is and what their opening times are, is there still people in the building, etc., etc. It can give us a clearer picture of what is actually going on. The trick is that we start using this data to create smarter firefighters and not only give them a sort of set of tick boxes, which you need to do this and need to do that to solve this problem, but these are the pieces of information we can gather for those firefighters for them to make conscious decisions about how they're going to tackle this incident. That is where I see a huge opportunity to make the fire service, when there is an incident, which we cannot predict, more effective. Does that answer your question, Yazel?
Yes, it answers totally. Thank you. I think that the question of that Ariel has. Ariel, you still there?
Yes, sorry, I had my microphone offline, sorry.
Okay.
But I asked you another question, first in Portuguese and then in English. Eu gostaria de saber quais são as dificuldades numa situação de crise, como algumas que você mencionou, para juntar e fazer com que os atores envolvidos trabalhem de maneira integrada, e como a Open Data pode ajudar nisso. Então, so in English, I would like to know which are the main difficulties to put all of the main actors, the people that are involved in a crisis situation, to work integrated during the crisis, and how you think that open data can help for that. I thought in the last week the crash airplane, and there was a lot of actors working like together, but not necessarily integrated, and maybe or as you said, open data can be a support and can help in this way. What do you think? And I would like to know what do you think about that?
I think you have to understand that, especially in the beginning of a crisis, and take the very unfortunate incident last week with this plane crash. It's going to be very unclear. There will be always an unclear situation in the beginning. If we use open data, I haven't looked into that incident, but if you look at what you could do with open data in very early stages of an incident, that would be very much generate a common picture as soon as possible, so that all the people actually have an understanding what is really going on and share the information they have available openly. And there's quite a bit of examples where that could be of interest, especially if you have interdisciplinary incidents or cross-border incidents. We have this sort of famous problem in the Netherlands and Germany that We both have ambulances, but what the ambulances can actually do is not the same on both sides of the border. In Germany, you actually have two types of ambulances, and the Netherlands has one type of ambulance, which is sort of in between the two German types. If you would communicate to the German, from a Dutch perspective, to the German, say, give me an ambulance, they would have no idea what to send, or they would send something and it will never be what you expected. So opening up what you do as organizations before the incident starts can actually help you make better understanding of what's going on. If you do not have a crisis organization in place, if you did not train the people to work in crisis organizations, open data by itself will not help that much. If there is a crisis organization with well-trained people who are very good at sort of working together and assessing information using open data, will actually benefit them because they will have a common source of information instead of bits and pieces coming out from everywhere. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Eu gostaria de saber se das pessoas que estão assistindo tem mais alguma pergunta. Se tiver, por favor, no chat do lado direito para colocar. E se não tiver mais nenhuma pergunta ou se aparecer surgir alguma dúvida, aqui, Bart, there is someone here, Rosani. She said that she would like to thank you very much because it was very interesting, your presentation. And she said that it also opened a lot of ideas to when you present your case about linked data, to think solutions for the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue, some of the main epidemics here. Mm-hmm. So Rosani would like to thank you about that. And Everton is saying that it's a good idea to think projects here in Brazil. And so, if anyone, se mais ninguém tem perguntas, if anyone has more questions, I would like to thank you very, very much for your time, Bart. For me, it was very interesting, your experience. As I said, we have an important challenge here in Brazil and in Latin America to make more impact with the open data that we already have. We are in the process to open more data, but we need to understand what we have to do with the data that we already have, and how can we change the life of a lot of people with this data. So for me it was very interesting, and I don't know if Yaso would like to say something else, but thank you very much, Bart. We'll translate your presentation and cut in to upload in the YouTube again. If someone else would like to send us another question in the next days, you can do it by the email of the Open Knowledge Brazil. I don't know, Yaso, if you want to say something else.
Yeah, just thank you, Bart, again. It's the first webinar of a series, so you're the opening webinar. We are going to compile and probably you're gonna receive an email asking for the links of the references that you've done. Congratulations for the work, and thank you again.
It was my pleasure.
Great, then that's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much e muito obrigado a todos que participaram. O vídeo vai ficar disponível. Have a nice day, Bart, and boa tarde para todos aqui no Brasil.